Welcome to the Predictive World series brought to you by SalesChoice, which specializes in ending revenue uncertainty for human advantage. I'm your host, Jen Yim. I'm the Director of Product and Marketing here at SalesChoice, and we bring 3 services powered by our AI platform. There's Sales Insights, which helps sales professionals with guided insights, Mood Insights, which helps connect frontline voices to leadership, and third, AI and Data Science as a Service, where we design, build, and maintain AI models with a new focus on generative AI. Over the years, we've been hosting numerous experts and thought leaders on AI and revenue growth, and we've built a trove of podcasts, webinars, white papers, and more. And I invite our listeners to go to saleschoice.com/resources to access that. Today, we have a very esteemed guest with us. It's Nick Bostrom, author of Deep Utopia. Nick, welcome and pleasure to meet you. And could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm happy to be with you. Well, I'm a philosopher, I guess, if you have to use a label, although I have a background in a variety of disciplines. And I was until recently a professor at Oxford University, where I headed the Future of Humanity Institute. As a multidisciplinary group, it was that had as its mandate to try to think carefully about the really big picture questions for human civilization. And in particular, the way that technologies might transform the human condition in some fundamental way.
Very cool. And to start our conversation, I'm going to turn it over to our Dr. Cindy Gordon to kick it off.
Nick, it's such a pleasure being with you today, and I was really intrigued to read your new book, and congratulations. Just scanning through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I thought that was a very original approach, and I love the dialogue. But what surprised me, Nick, it was you think your first book that you wrote on superintelligence, which was really a reflective perspective on what are the risks, what the dangers, strategies, and trying to unlock, that deeper critical thinking. This book was very positive in many regards, in the sense that just extrapolating the human condition out and looking at how Deep Utopia explores life and meaning in a solved world. And I felt it was a very spiritual book as well, this one, which was very intriguing for me. Obviously, your philosophical roots always shine through in everything you write, and the theoretical aspects also come through. But there was definitely a deep thought process to not blend dystopia with utopia. And I would just love to hear why you wrote this book, and it really does inspire more hope. I don't know if I'll be here when this all comes together, but it was an interesting intellectual process to go through in reflection.
Well, thank you. I mean, you might well be, given the timelines have started to look a lot shorter recently, right? The AI is just galloping ahead, and I think the next few years will be really interesting. Yeah, it's the other side of the coin, you might say. So whereas the earlier book, Superintelligence, came out in 2014 and had been in the works for 6 years prior to that, focused primarily on what could go wrong with AI, so that the view was, if we could more clearly see where the pitfalls lay, we might have a better chance of steering clear of them. And this new book, Deep Utopia, looks at what happens if things go right. And the condition that we will then end up with, where you have, very advanced AIs and robots and other technological advances, and what the role of us humans might be in such a quote unquote solved world that we might then achieve.
Yeah, to me, the underpinning also was just the focus on the meaning of life and humanity, and that sort of deeper reflection that can come about with, more abundance of time in many regards. Jen, do you want to go to the next slide? Yeah, so I think, this really focuses on the next question, is what are the big questions that you really want organizations, leaders, board directors to really think hard about, that they need to really confront and plan for, much to your earlier point that this is moving at a faster trajectory. But what do you, if you had to say the big questions you want people to really think hard about, what are they?
Well, we first need to make sure we get there to this deep utopia condition. And I think we are still very far away from that. There are some huge challenges between where we are now and this hypothetical future state of a solved world. I tend to divide them broadly into three categories, but I should say upfront that in addition to these three broad categories of sort of ultimate challenges, there are also many more here and now challenges that we need to address. But if we are thinking more about this kind of fundamental transformation to a machine intelligence era, I think there is first and perhaps foremost the alignment problem. This was a big focus of superintelligence.
Mhm.
And the idea there is that if we do figure out at some point how to create machine intellects that can do everything that the human brain can do, and then, presumably, I would say shortly after that, superintelligence that can do all of that, but much better and faster. How then can we make sure to align these sort of arbitrarily powerful AI systems to the goals of their creators? And this is a technical challenge. There's been a big shift in that. When I wrote Superintelligence, and this was like the main reason for writing it, this alignment problem was very much neglected. Now, on the other hand, all the frontier AI labs have research groups specifically trying to figure out some solutions to this. But we still don't probably have a solution that would work. So it remains an open question. We will solve this problem of scalable alignment. But that's the first challenge. Then I think we have a broad category which you might refer to as sort of the governance challenge, which is assuming we technically are able to sort of steer these powerful AI systems as we wish, how can we then make sure that we humans use this powerful technology predominantly for positive purposes? So not to wage war against each other or to oppress each other or for other nefarious ends, but like broadly speaking, to create prosperity and health and happiness and so on. This is a broad category, but it's more a political challenge than a technical challenge. But we need to do at least reasonably well on that, I think, to have anything that could be called a utopian future. And then a third fundamental challenge has so far received much less attention, but I think ultimately it's really important as well, which is not just how can we make sure the AIs don't harm us, and not just how can we make sure we don't harm each other using AI tools, but also how can we make sure we don't harm the AIs. I think we will build increasingly sophisticated digital minds, and some of those might attain various levels of moral patiency, moral status, so that it matters also how well the future goes for these potentially sentient minds that we're building. So those are three big challenges. Now, I think obviously for sort of the corporate leader, these are more sort of existential challenges for humanity rather than something that on a day-to-day basis is relevant in a corporate setting. And I think the more near-term challenges we have with intellectual property, with like access to these AI systems, with the reliability, I think soon we will have increasingly sophisticated social companion bots and a whole sort of ethical issues arising from that. Making sure that they don't enable users to do nefarious things like creating, biological weapons or cyber crime tools and such are kind of issues that already arise with the current generation of AI systems.
Yeah, just building on what you're saying, from a corporate context, one of the foundations is, to have that deeper dialogue on the purpose and the circular economy and really what they want to achieve, what they want to be known for. That's one of the areas that the gap is probably not having that time, reflection, that purposeful discussion. And you discuss purpose a lot in your book, which was really great to see. And I think that kind of dialogue is really what's needed in the boardrooms to really look at the use cases and are we building a better world because of these efforts and in the design practices. And so often it's wanting to get on underway with some initiatives, and then all of a sudden these initiatives blossom and people haven't had those deeper conversations. And the key word I think you mentioned was an alignment, which is really, really key. We don't have the alignment efficiency structures yet operationally moving in most of the organizations that we see, whether they're large global enterprises. They're still wrestling a lot with data complexity issues and machine learning ops, and obviously now with the new EU Act coming in and influencing other structures, people are starting to intensify their audit controls, right, and making sure that things are more buttoned down for what's to come. Let's go on and continue our discussion, but thank you for sharing the those underpinnings. One of the things that I was quite intrigued by your book was you introduced a 3-factor model. And I really love the structure of that model. And can you explain a little bit about what you were trying to do as a result of that framework?
Yeah, so this is not my original model, but in growth economics, it's common to distinguish, on the one hand, labor as an input to economic production, and then capital. These are sort of the factories and machine tools, etc. And then a third, what is referred to as land, but really encompasses any resource that we can't make more of. And so those 3 broad categories of inputs then combine in the economy to enable the outputs that we see. And so one can then contemplate in this context where we have increasingly advanced AIs, what happens to economic growth in these scenarios. And in effect, what you will have is these machine minds becoming, to an increasing degree, substitute for labor. Like in the limit, you will be able to do everything that human workers can do, but do it cheaper and better through AIs and robots. So the value of labor then declines, right? And then initially there might be a scarcity of certain forms of capital, in particular the hardware to run all of these AIs, the data centers, the NVIDIA chips. We're already seeing a kind of shortage of NVIDIA chips and reflected in the market cap.
Yeah.
But ultimately we can make more of those. And then in the longer run, the constraint will be land or these resources that you can't make more of. Yeah, so it's in the context of this discussion of what will happen to average income and labor productivity as this transition to the machine intelligence era unfolds, and the different dynamics that can impact that.
Yeah, yeah, Nick, also in a lot of your thinking, to me, it's getting people to really think about the scenarios, right? So you've been so focused on advising people on the job impacts, right? And the sheer magnitude, and you stretch out, and all of a sudden, if we get to the point where 90% of, I don't know if we can get to nirvana, I think our legal system will probably prevent full nirvana because you can't necessarily sue an algorithm, right? Although, who knows when you think about, this incredible sentient intelligence, it really does make you think, right, around the elasticity and the balancing that's required at an international level. And, we continually have good actors and obviously bad actors, right? Next slide, Jen. Let's move along. Just one of the things that is, I think, underpinning your book is to get to the deeper utopias. You talk about the technological maturity across a number of different technology capabilities, right? And it was interesting. I had a conversation not too long ago in a session that was done where you, the chief data scientist from Meta was there, and he said, we're still, even though we're maturing, AI is still, very similar to the intelligence of a cat. So we do get these variances, in terms of precision of thinking on different views from different experts. How long do you think it's going to take? Do you have a sense in your own intuition, Nick, and also what you're seeing broader in the marketplace of when these technology advances are going to get to the point where, you know, we were moving into incremental improvements, right? Which is what you highlight in the book, right? You kind of reach a point, and then the magnitude of the growth of those investments start to slow down.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of headroom still, space above us in the space of cognitive capability that machine intelligence will be able to explore. I don't think we are anywhere near the sort of the maximally efficient way of processing information that is physically possible in our universe. And even if we were, it would only be within the limits of a human skull. And in principle, you could have much larger computational systems. I do think in the long run, and this becomes relevant when one is thinking about sort of the ultimate outcomes and like the Deep Utopia, etc. At some point in the future, if things go well, our civilization will start to approximate a condition of a technological maturity, which would be a state where you have already developed basically all general technologies that are useful and that are physically possible. And I think we might never quite reach there, but I think we will get close. And possibly this might happen not that long after we have superintelligence, because once we have superintelligence, it would then be doing the further research technological development, right? But on digital timescales rather than on the biological timescales that we operate on. So you might have, with the development of superintelligence, telescoping of the future, where all those inventions that we might have been able to make in the fullness of time, in thousands of years of continued work on this, they might happen quite quickly after you have superintelligence. And then you might have this approximation to technological maturity. It's interesting you mentioned, like, well, you said maybe our AIs are as intelligent as a cat. I think as we move closer to AGI, artificial general intelligence, it starts to look less like a point and more like a richer multidimensional space. So right now we have, I mean, I don't know what cats you know, but the ones that I have encountered have not really been that good at writing Python scripts and doing these other things that our current large language models can do. So in some sense, I think current AI systems are like super intelligent compared to cats. On the other hand, I think cats still have better sort of motor dexterity and ability to like survive in a natural environment than our current sort of robot incarnated AI systems have. It's also interesting to think in terms of just from a kind of processing power perspective. It might well be that the largest neural networks we currently have that undergird the performance of ChatGPT-4, etc., are roughly comparable in terms of the number of parameters to the number of synapses in a cat brain. You know, give or take some order of magnitude, but it does look like we've seen the performance of these AI systems scale roughly in proportion to sort of the parameter count and the amount of compute used in training and running these, which is one of the reasons for suspecting that we might see continued rapid improvement over the next few years as we keep scaling these systems up. If their performance, if their intelligence grows correspondingly, we are kind of soon approaching full human equivalence.
Yeah, it's you know, obviously I'm sure you're following Dr. Jeffrey Hinton's concerns about what we've unleashed, and you know what you're trying to, I think, also communicate is we'll have incredible power, but how we use it is going to be what's really, really key, right? It's interesting to see, you know, him really speak out a lot more about the risks that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's one of the like the I guess the fathers of the deep learning revolution, and there has been this quite remarkable shift. Back when superintelligence was published, all these questions about potential existential risks from AI and alignment, they were completely ignored. Like nobody in academia was taking them seriously. There were like a handful of people on the internet who were trying to start to think about them, but basically people dismissed it as sort of futurism or science fiction. And in the intervening years, there has been this complete reversal of that, where now it's a very, very mainstream view that AI alignment is hard and could potentially pose existential risks, and that the whole AI transition will be transformative. And people like Hinton are coming out and expressing concern, and other like Joshua Bengio is like another one of the sort of fathers of deep learning, similarly, and many other leading AI leaders. So it's been quite interesting just as a kind of participant in this space, just to see how ideas that at one point are like completely outside the Overton window and regarded as very fringy or kind of speculative or silly, sort of just over a few short years become completely mainstream.
Yeah, it's a very good observation. But it's good, I guess part of the question is, can we move fast enough, right? You look at the accelerated cybersecurity innovations that are going on right now, and deep fakes, and, can we curb some of these activities? Lots and lots of concerns just on the incredible growth of the dark web as well. If we go on to the next question, Jen, if you don't mind. This one was interesting. I suspect that this was your formula logic, Nick. Don't know what the roots were, here, but, I love the fact that you were putting together a structure, in terms of purpose and the meaning of life, and, some of the correlations, and, putting that structure together, you were really trying to communicate something, I think, that was pretty profound. So I just love to hear the story, because I'm always intrigued when people start putting some structure, mathematical structure together, and to guide. So just to get a voiceover would be great.
Yeah, so the context here is an exploration of the values that we could realize in this condition of technological maturity and in the solved world. What human values are possible, what kind of lives would be actually make sense in this transformed condition. Because a lot of the things that currently sort of furnish our lives would become completely unnecessary in a solved world. Like a lot of our hours now are taken up by doing economic labor. Like, we go into work. Well, some of us, I guess, work from home, but in order to get a paycheck, and then even in the non-economic part of our lives, there's a lot of stuff we do because we have to. We brush our teeth because we don't want to have tooth decay. You do your laundry because you need clean clothes. You drive the kids to school because they need to get there. Like all kinds of stuff that occupies a very large fraction of our waking hours. But if machines could do all of these tasks better, then there is the question of what remains. Now, some plausible human values could definitely be realized to a very high degree in this condition of a solved world, and it's kind of trivial that they could be. So, for example, pleasure and enjoyment are like affordances that where there is no incompatibility with living in a solved world, and in fact, you would have much better means of inducing pleasure and enjoyment through like super drugs or direct brain manipulation, etc. But certain other human values look like they might potentially be undermined, and in particular, certain values having to do with purpose and significance, interestingness, and meaning. And so the book goes into more depth in trying to analyze for each of those values whether they actually could be instantiated in this condition of technological maturity, where in some sense human labor is not needed for anything. Like our instrumental efforts more generally is unnecessary, and then what gives us purpose? And so one of these concepts is the concept of meaning in life, and that's what this particular bit pertains to, where I have a little conceptual analysis of this notion of meaning in life. That is, it's kind of summarized there. It'll probably take us too long to fully explicate that. But it's like a little analysis of what we might be referring to when we speak of a life being meaningful or lacking meaning, or the value of having meaning in your life. As distinct from just sort of feeling subjectively a sense of purpose, which is something that you would be able to induce in this condition of technological maturity. Like you up your dopamine levels or whatever, and you will feel kind of supremely engaged and motivated. But some philosophers think that there's more to meaning than that. It's not just a subjective state. It's also like has more objective elements. And this little explication is an attempt to get clarity on that, so that one can then ask the question of whether this value of meaning would be possible in a solved world.
Yeah, maybe, you think ahead and you think of our educational systems, right? And the need to build deeper foundations. There's lots of concerns on the decline of critical thinking, right? The attention deficit realities, right? Always being plugged in. And do we have a dialogue to strengthen the human condition? And your point about maybe there is a cornerstone that has to flow through everything, in terms of how to parent, the dialogue to have all the little ones and all this, because there'll still be learning going on even in this perfect world, but what the dialogue is about and stimulating the deeper thinking that's humans are good at. I liked in some ways that it's a bit scary, and I think about this multi-dimensional, all-knowing, intelligent being, right? Which is theoretically very possible, right? Because the more and more we feed these AI models, we know how the leaps that they can take forward, right? And as we amplify multiple methods, which we've seen, right? And we were talking about trillions and trillions of parameters. There's no way that humans will be able to outperform, right? Just at the speed that the trajectory is moving. But getting people to understand and have a vision for their own life and how they might want to live it is, I guess philosophy needs to be mainstream. Maybe that's where everything will go, right? Into the philosophical domain and the dialogues that are needed. So we kind of curtail, when I look at some of the declining human comprehension rates, if you get into the deep math skills, right, and the general aptitude of the general public on math as an example. Anyways, fascinating conversation. I think the unifying point for our viewers is purpose and meaning might be the most significant foundations to preserve humanity.
Yeah, or at least one part of it that we want to keep track of.
Yeah, very, very true. And Jen, you can go to the last question. I found this quite interesting, where you declare in the book, I think it was in a few times, that you think you're a pessimist. And for me, when I read this book, I really felt you were being quite an optimist.
I don't think of myself as a pessimist. I don't think I declare that.
It's okay. I'll find the right page, but
No, maybe you have caught me out, but
it's okay.
no,
It says I am a pessimist, but that's okay. Let's just focus in on the real question was, do you think humanity will really achieve utopia versus slip into a dystopian reality? Or do you think we're going to, see a bit of both of these realities before there's a equilibrium? If you think through generations of humans, there's always been the good, there's been the bad, and there's been the real ugly, and those forces are kind of universal dynamics.
I think the jury is still out. Whereas so far it's kind of been a mixed bag through human history. I mean, a lot of bad stuff and a decent amount of good stuff as well. But like, the human life is what it is. It's not like, but I think it's likely to, or somewhat likely to shake out, so that we'll get like either something extremely good or something very bad, and less likely the longer the time scale you're considering that we will have this mixed bag. But which way it will shake out, I think, is very much an open question.
Yeah, that's a bit alarming, right? Which way the pendulum will really, really swing. Do you think the legislation is going to help, or do you think, it's going to take every, large technology organization to really help lead us because they have so much power? They're developing these capabilities, right?
It's hard to say. I think there certainly will be places where regulation will be needed, but figuring out exactly what the right form of that is and the right points during the development at which to introduce it is a really complex question, and I don't really have the all the answers to that. I am thinking about it, but there are so many considerations on different sides of this. It's a very strategically difficult issue to consider. I think that broadly speaking, it would seem desirable if there were the opportunity at some critical point in the development, like say just when we are figuring out how to create superintelligence, if it were possible for whoever is actually doing this, whether it's some particular lab or some national project or whatever, if they had the ability to go a little bit slower during those critical stages, maybe to, pause for 6 months, or to, rather than immediately cranking all the knobs up to 11, like doing it incrementally, and so you could observe what happens and like check that the safeguards are working as intended. I think that would seem preferable to a situation where you have, maybe 15 different competitors all racing to get there first, and whoever decides to be a little bit cautious just immediately fall behind and becomes irrelevant. Like that would seem to be a sort of risk maximizing approach to developing superintelligence. So I think having some ability for frontier leading edge developers to coordinate at the relevant time to sort of possibly slow down a little bit would be valuable. On the other hand, I'm also a little bit concerned about us ending up on some trajectory where we close the doors on AI forever. It doesn't look likely given the current situation, but it looks more likely than it did just 2 years ago, given how much the conversation has changed. And there are now these sort of AI doomers who are advocating for AI pauses or bans and regulations. And I think that we probably need more regulation and oversight than we currently have, but I would want it to sort of stop at the optimal point. Whereas I think there is a risk that once you get into this game, it kind of overshoots the target. And you could get the runaway stigmatization of AI that results in some sort of permaban. Low probability, but increasing probability. So it's like an avalanche, like it's easy, you can trigger an avalanche, right? But once it's gets going, you can't really stop it. Like it runs its course. So that's some of these questions are kind of weighing on my mind, and I haven't really fully made up my mind yet where I think things should be pushed.
Yeah, I can't imagine the technology leaders slowing things down. You're right, it would be other forces, right? And you see, the drama that's gone on, right, with OpenAI, and obviously you've got some innovation with Mistral, which is, actually a really good performing large language model. We've been doing a fair bit of analysis across the different LLMs. That's one of the things that Amazon's done with their Bedrock infrastructure. It makes it very easy to plug in different data sets and then look at how the different models are performing. And, sometimes bigger isn't necessarily better, right? In the number of parameters, these things are very use case specific. I like the fact of people coming together, right? It goes back to the old, intellectual property discussions, right? Of how much people are willing to share to really do the deeper thinking and create their safeguards. That I think these are very significant board director dialogues. We do see the governance structures, shifting in terms of director liability insurance, right? So you can see the insurance and the reinsurance organizations are shifting and building new, I should say shifting, they're augmenting additional policies to protect their clients, because I think we can see the court cases, are going to ramp, and how these impacts will be with how the courts weigh on OpenAI right now. I think has a lot of people wondering, kind of to your point, will that start to really create an edge, a rougher edge, and then declining willingness to work with certain organizations.
I think that will be like increasing pressures from different directions being brought to bear on leading AI developers. Like there are big stakes, and different people have different interests in this, and will try to push them from various sides to change their behaviors, and I think it will become a fraught area with like no easy path that avoids controversy. And so, yeah, it's going to be a hard job to be the leader of any one of these AI labs in the coming years.
Yeah, I almost wish that Nick, all of the scientists and the CTOs have a mandatory course with you to really get into their rewire some of their psyche. I think and no, and I'm being very sincere that in many of the courses that CIOs or CTOs or chief data scientists take, they take a basic course in AI ethics, but it's not a real deep discovery philosophical foundation, and they, it's hard to keep up with other practices, but how important it is, because they're really shaping the future for all of us in many dimensions. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us today. It's just been a real pleasure. I know our viewers will enjoy reading Deep Utopia. I can hardly wait to write up my article on it. And just thank you so much for all of your generous your generous contributions to making our world a better place, not being afraid to expose the real questions that we really need to think deeply about, and to create really a world that's got more purpose and, to use your words, far more meaning. And it is in reach, but what we do and on all aspects of so many integrated disciplines to come together is really it's really a deep conversations. And I think the word you chose, deep, was a very appropriate title in front of Utopia. So
well, it's aspirational, at least.
Very aspirational, but it's better to paint a world that has a possibility than a world that, to use your words, is all gloom and doom, right?
Yeah. No, I've enjoyed the conversations in there. I mean, I feel we're still very much like, I feel like a little child trying to understand this much bigger world that we've never seen before, with the AIs coming online and the fundamental transformations that will lead to. I don't think anybody has all the answers here, but at least we can start to try to search for what the right questions are to ask.
Yeah, there you're right. It is the right questions. And that begins the exploration. And maybe that's one of the most important things that humans need to really protect, is not being afraid to think hard and asking the right questions, right? That leads us to make a change, or to think about doing something different. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Nick. Pleasure to connect and discuss all of this together. And thanks to our listeners for joining us on the Predictive World series by SalesChoice. I invite them to go to saleschoice.com/resources for more, and join us next time.